You're listening to the Weather Junkies.
Oh boy. Large wedge tornado coming up into Tuscaloosa. A winter storm warning is in effect for our area.
So we can expect at least another 2 to 4 inches overnight. Then that snow.
The National Weather Service in Huntsville has issued a tornado warning for northwestern Massachusetts.
14 to 22 inches of snow!
Good Thursday evening. Thank you for joining us on the Weather Junkies. We are so excited that you are with us for this edition of the podcast. Of course, our guest this week is Ginger Zee from ABC News. But for now, I'm Tyler Jankowski joining the show from the Champlain Valley alongside Dakota Smith in Colorado. Dakota.
Everyone, thanks for joining us tonight. It's been kind of a weird week in Colorado, at least the Front Range, that is. We've had some off and on rain. We actually had a rumble of thunder on Monday. And we're just kind of in this pattern where we're getting rain, a little bit of snow on Friday night and Saturday. But like when it's not raining, it's been sunny and nice out. So it's kind of hard to figure out what to wear or what to bring. I guess be safe and bring an umbrella every day. But hopefully we're going to avoid any weather that's too cold. The precip is nice though. Fire season is coming up, and it was a pretty snow lacking winter. So any precip we can get, we're going to be happy about that. Tyler, I actually haven't been following the weather where you are. I know it's been rainy on the East Coast, but how's the weather where you are?
It was sort of drizzly earlier in the week, but we had sort of a transition day yesterday where we had some late day sun. I think we got into the 70s, lower 70s, and today we got to 79 with no clouds overhead, at least where I am. So it was a beautiful day. I went down and stood over the river here not far away and savored the weather. And looks like we cool off going into the weekend, but I'm excited. I mean, May is almost here, and we really have, we're at the time of year when a blast of unseasonably cold air is 60 and not 45. Yeah. So we're golden.
Yeah, that's nice. We have a comment from a viewer on Twitter, JP Kalb, fan of the show. He says, bring on the heat out here. I think he's outside of San Francisco. It's 80s likely in East Bay. Perfect umpiring weather. You're an umpire, JP. So yeah, it's kind of a weird time of the year. Spring weather varies everywhere, and I know some chasers are usually looking for severe weather to start up. It's a pretty quick start to April, but it's kind of cooled off a little bit in terms of severe weather. But that's weather in our backyards. Let's get to trending in the Weatherverse. We have a few tweets, a few stories from whatever was popular this week in the Weatherverse. Tyler, introduce our first one here.
Our first tweet comes from the Capital Weather Gang. They are at Capital Weather. The tweet says, U.S. Climate Extreme Index currently ranks highest on record due to abnormally warm and wet weather so far this year. And it's a graph that is all red and shows something about climate extremes. I know you interacted with this tweet, Dakota. Why don't you do some explaining?
Well, I interacted with this tweet just briefly. It scared me for a second because it was all red, and I was like, it's all red. It looks scary. But I guess basically that this is showing like how abnormal the weather has been across the nation.
So based on,
I guess it's been very.
Is it just warmth in wet episodes?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Full disclosure, I don't know everything about this index, but from the way the Capital Weather Gang described it, it was basically just on average, the country has been wetter and warmer than normal for this time of the year. So I can agree with that. It's been wet here. It hasn't been warmer or anything here, but it's an average thing across the country. But they also explain in that article, if you go through it, The title of the article is "Drought in America Falls to 17-Year Low." That's the Capital Weather Gang by the Washington Post. They show where we've come since December 2016 in terms of drought. And it's a pretty stark difference from just, 7 months ago to now. There's still some drought, but not nearly as much, especially in the southeast, southwestern parts of California. Out here in Colorado, we're still in a drought. I think we're in a moderate drought. But hopefully we're going to get over that. And then up in your neck of the woods, Tyler, you all have seen some drought relief as well.
Yeah, there's very little drought left. I think it's the second tier drought that's spotty in some parts of southern New England, but it was way worse than that a year ago. And things have pretty much cleared up. There's, like I said, still some dryness, but it seems fairly active in the next week or so. So I think we'll continue to chip away at it.
Yeah, always good news. Always good news when drought is down. Next tweet here comes from Ryan Maui. You can follow him at Twitter at Ryan Maui. How much time during a weather broadcast do you think local TV meteorologists should spend on climate change? As an example, predictions of the 22nd future. So he put out a poll here to his Twitter audience of 35,000 people. And the options are none, 30 seconds, or fill it up. And
the poll is over.
The poll's over, yeah. The poll's over. He got just under 700 votes. And basically 80% of the voters said none. That doesn't really surprise me because of some of the things he tweets and probably some of the people that follow him that don't really care about climate as much. I also think it was a little misleading because the three options he gave were kind of like, I don't know. I feel like climate, it can be dabbled into a weather forecast, but I feel like it's probably better off as its own segment of time, just because climate and weather are so different. I don't know, Tyler. What do you think?
Well, that's my take on the question. I voted none because a lot of times it would just be so out of place it would disrupt the flow of an actual weather forecast. But I could absolutely see specialized segments on climate change, 1-2-ish minutes long, just as a separate part. But his question was weather broadcast, so I assume that to mean the 2 minutes and 30 seconds where you talk about the weather for the next 7 days. I think going off on a tangent would sort of be out of place in a segment like that. But I'm absolutely a proponent of something separate on air, and you could do something separate online too. But I don't think it fits. And some days I could see it maybe fitting in, but if you want to do something consistently, it doesn't belong in a weather forecast. Because
I think you're right.
I don't think so. Then your platform is eroded out from underneath you, and then it doesn't even matter anymore.
Yeah, the president of the Weather Channel, David Clarke, chimed in on Twitter, and he said he agrees with us. He agrees with me at least. He said false choice is kind of what I thought. You weren't given all the right choices, I feel like, and then they had a nice little conversation there about totally different because they have loads of time to talk about whatever they want.
Yes. Our next tweet comes from Devin Boyer. He's at WXDevin on Twitter, and he says, "This latest episode of Weather Hype was one of my favorites. Alternate title could definitely have been, quote, coping help with weatherjack, unquote." Sounds like you had some fun on some other podcast.
I had so much fun on Weather Hype. If you don't listen to them, please listen to them. They're called Weather Hype. You can find them on iTunes or any podcast platform. And their website is weatherhypepodcast.com. We're talking about weather Twitter and I guess just where weather Twitter has come and what it's like to interact with people on weather Twitter. And we did talk a lot about how you can take out your anger on Twitter, and it might not always be healthy to do that, and you might, I don't know, make the wrong people, or you might make people angry, and there's other ways to deal with some of that frustration. And it was an awesome talk. So check out the podcast, not just for what I was saying, but what Castle and Min had to say. Always a good time. You can follow them on Twitter at WeatherHype. On to our next tweet here. It's from AtmoLife, a great blog that talks everything atmospheric sciences and meteorology. You can follow them at AtmoLife on Twitter. Their tweet said, instead of us all tweeting weather info on our own accounts, I created one master account for everyone to use. Remember to hashtag stick to weather. And then he tweeted a picture of an account, which was at public weather, and then the password, which was WX Twitter. And it was a disaster, essentially. Basically, anyone could just log into this Twitter account and tweet whatever they wanted. And that's exactly what happened. And it was kind of hilarious, I got to be honest. I didn't actually see it happen in real time. I came in at the last second and saw what happened at the end and what became of it. And eventually someone changed the Twitter account handle, so you couldn't actually find it anymore or follow what they were tweeting because it was a totally different handle. Got a little graphic, and I will not subject you to that because it was not great. But pretty much exactly what you expect when all of Twitter can log into one account.
Yeah, I unfortunately missed tweets, but I find it hilarious that they did the blurry picture of a Word document with public WX still underlined. It seems very much like a Podunk Weather Service office tweet.
Yeah, I could see them doing something like this. Or
it's not like, short staffing tonight. Here, take over our Twitter. Anyway, our next tweet comes from Sean Sublet. He is a meteorologist at Climate Central. The climate folks had a gathering in the D.C. area a couple days ago. His tweet says Goddard, Maryland. Dakota might be familiar with that. But basically, it was a gathering of a number of broadcasters, Climate Central people, maybe some other people, maybe writers. Yes, I believe there are a few writers from the Washington Post. His tweet is a picture of a temperature of the mid to upper level troposphere. Don't want to get into too much detail about that. Basically, it's a trend line from 1980-ish to now, and it shows that the temperature is rising. His tweet is average of 3 satellite estimates of global mean temp during satellite record. Few volcanic cooling signatures, but overall warming trend. Just a very simple chart, shows the incline over the last couple decades.
Yeah, it's an interesting tweet. I don't have much to say about it, honestly, but I'm curious why they were looking at the mid to upper troposphere.
Yeah, that's I guess that was what makes it different from other things.
Yeah. I'm not sure the context of the talk, but in a very similar vein here, Ryan Breton tweeted out something from presumably the same conference in Goddard, Maryland. I assume it had something to do with NASA. It was probably hosted by NASA because that's where one of the NASA labs is I guess. His tweet, Ryan Breton, you can follow him at Ryan Breton Weather. He says models have underestimated Arctic sea ice loss, which means they've predicted sea ice to be higher than it is right now. Essentially,
that is fascinating. You have obviously temperature projections for the next however many years. I guess you have ice, as we see here, and the little bullet point for 2015 is well below all of what the projections had. We've talked about sea ice before on this podcast, how it's been so much below average, especially in the last 6 months. So this is sort of a next step in that department, comparing it to what some of the models were showing. And that's a really alarming discrepancy.
And, I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe it was the past few years have been weirdly oddly low. But I know with land ice and sea level rise, models greatly unpredict the melting of land ice and the rate of sea level rise because the climate models aren't great at predicting land ice dynamics, basically how the land ice is moving. And some models don't even have any land ice dynamics in them, which greatly underestimates the amount of melting and consequent sea level rise. So I don't know what's going on here, but surely interesting, alarming.
I wonder if the strong El Nino has an effect outside of the El Nino year.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I remember when we had Dr. Julian Strova on, and she was telling me how the storm tracks favored melting in the Arctic. And so it wasn't, it wasn't just climate warming. It was that made it such a crazy year. So I'm sure it does have something to do with.
It'll be interesting because I see some murmurs about El Nino coming back in the fall. Sort of a mixed signal, I guess, now, but you never know when it's going to go off the deep end.
Yeah, that I kind of doubt that will happen, right? But
well, usually a strong El Nino, like the one we saw, what was it, last winter? Usually that's like, I think, once in a decade.
Right.
Yeah. But I feel like all that may be off the table. You just never know. I feel like some of these odd things happen a little bit more. So we'll see.
Smart enough to speculate. But that does it actually for this week trending in the Weatherverse. We got to get to our feature presentation here. Pleasure to have a one-on-one interview with Ginger Zee. And I didn't exactly know what to expect. I was just hoping for a nice conversation, talk about a few things in her job and kind of her history. But I was inspired after talking with her. I truly was. She has such an attitude and such a story that is inspiring. And the work that she's doing now, exactly what a role model in science and in weather should be doing. She's out there trying to inspire anyone, specifically young girls, to get involved with science, to get involved with meteorology. And to me, it seems like she uses nearly every opportunity to kind of convey her passion for weather and science. And I don't know, that's inspiring to me, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm really, really excited to share this interview with everyone. It's about a 25-minute. Tyler, can you introduce her? Basically, just give us some of her history and where she is now before we go into that.
Absolutely. So she went to Valparaiso University for a Bachelor of Science degree in meteorology between 1999 and 2002. So she does have the full-fledged meteorology degree. I know she's very proud of that, and certainly, I didn't have the chance to talk with her, but that's quite an accomplishment. And she also has the CBM seal from the American Meteorological Society. She started her career in Michigan, a number of stations, including a station in Grand Rapids, Flint, another station in Grand Rapids. She worked as the meteorologist at the NBC owned and operated television station in Chicago for a couple of years until 2011. And that's when she joined ABC News. So it's a real privilege to have Ginger on the show, certainly someone in a very powerful position in meteorology and someone who is very qualified, and that is exciting. So let's begin that interview with Ginger.
And now we're joined by Good Morning America Chief Meteorologist Ginger Zee. Ginger, thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
So how did you end up where you are now? What was it about weather that got you hooked?
Oh, that is a long story. Are you sure you want?
Yeah.
No, I got interested, like so many meteorologists, really young. I grew up on Lake Michigan and had the opportunity one summer to spend the entire summer on the lake, on a cottage that overlooked the lake. And it was basically like storm chasing as an 8-year-old. So I would see thunderstorms form, and I just fell in love with the idea of what was that thing? Why does my mom freak out every time it comes close? It was a very stormy summer in the 80s. And so it was almost kismet. It was supposed to happen, serendipity, that I fell in love with weather there, because science and math were always my thing. As I went through school, I started talking more and more about weather, and people were encouraging me. And so those folks said to me, you should really look into meteorology. So when I went to find a college, I really didn't intend on getting into television. That was not my intent. So I found Valparaiso University, where that was not, especially at that time, was not something big there. And more people went and got their masters and PhDs and went into research a lot of times in university and lots of places. So I chose Valpo. And in that, I had a second person in my life, a professor named John Knox. And he told me in my Meteorology 103 class, you should really check out TV. And I was like, I don't know, I'm so shy. That's so weird. But I stuck with meteorology and I said, fine, I'll check out an internship. And I did an internship, sent out all of these resumes, and had another serendipitous moment where the one person that got back to me, or the one television station that got back to me, a freshman in 1999, was in Alabama, James Spann. And
Wow.
that was, so it was just the crazy combination of things that had to happen. I picked up, and I always don't give myself enough credit for this, but here I was going to school in Indiana. It was seriously the day I was leaving to go back to West Michigan to spend the summer bartending and with my high school boyfriend. And, it would have been much more comfortable to just go back and do what I had planned to do.
Yeah.
But they said, do you know the Birmingham area well? And I said, sure. And I just moved my whole life down there, and got a job at a country club to pay bills, and got an apartment, for my first apartment ever. And just like, it's wild to think that I grew up very quickly that summer. But in the midst of growing up very quickly, I found an absolute adoration of weather on television. And that's where and James Spann, known so well in the weather world, changed my perspective. And so I went back from that internship with a tape, and I saw, it was another moment where I saw this flyer, meteorologists wanted, at WYIN, a PBS station in Maryville, Indiana, right down the road from where I went to college. I went and auditioned, and I got the job. From that point forward, I had 2 more internships. I left school with 3 internships with Tom Skilling, another internship, Peter Chan, amazing kings of weather, inspiring me the whole way. I had the killer tape, or so I thought, because I had, had been on TV since I was 19, and here I was 21, and I thought, there's no way I don't get a job. I didn't get a job. So for 9 months, I just kept applying, and I ended up working in radio and I always tell people that is the best training I ever had. Worked in radio for about 9 months, and then got my first on-air job at WEYI in Flint, Michigan, and then moved to Wood TV in Grand Rapids, Michigan, WMAQ in Chicago. I started filling in on MSNBC and then ABC. It was certainly a long journey, but it has been the most outstanding journey. And I'm so glad that woman made a mistake and called me and said, hey, y'all know the Birmingham area well, because I don't know that I would have been here. Or if I would have said no, I certainly wouldn't have been here.
So you've been on Good Morning America and ABC for about 5 years now, and you've been the chief meteorologist for over 3 years. How has this experience been for you?
It's outstanding. I mean, I think once I got into television, I said to myself, you may as well go to the top. Not. And I set a goal. I was at NBC affiliates the whole time, so I thought I'd be on the Today Show by 2010. I filled in on the weekend Today Show, and I thought, I made this goal. But as I was kind of winding my contract down in Chicago, I really felt like I had been in the studio too much. I really missed being out. I had storm chased in college. I missed being out telling stories. I had covered Katrina, and that really got to me, because I went from weather nerd to a human, and I realized how much more, the lives lost, affected, meant, and how much more my job meant because of that. It had nothing to do with me telling people how high the water line was. Like, nobody cares. They care about these people's lives that have been altered forever. And so I grew as a journalist there, and I found myself yearning for more of that, which I never even knew I had in me. So when I went to look for that next job, ABC just was the perfect fit. And I have to say, and this is not just because I still work there and I want them to keep me around, but they really, they're owned by Disney, but there's a Disney feel. If you dream it, you can do it. And I said to the president of ABC at the time, Ben Sherwood, I want to show a tornado on television within my first year here. I want people to realize we can be warning ahead of storms instead of just damage chasing after storms. I think there's this whole world. And I had the nicest compliment the other day. Somebody, one of the producers said, I don't remember weather before you. And I thought, wow, that is the nicest thing I could hear, because I hopefully put emphasis on in the right way. And I think, in a responsible, accurate, but it affects every single person. And it really is the biggest part of the news to me, because every person can be affected. And that's our main job, is to warn of the things that genuinely need warning.
So what's a typical day for you and your team? How big is the weather team at Good Morning America?
That's the other thing. So we started this change in weather. Sam Champion definitely led the way at the beginning to make weather more important. And then when I came in and added another component, I think we had made this strong on-air team. But what we didn't have is the back of the behind the scenes. We had one great meteorologist that did all the graphics, and he just ran everything, but it was too much, and we were doing weather so much more. So we started hiring. And when I took over for Sam, there was a whole daytime where I do world news as well. And I thought, if I'm traveling, I need these producers to be on track. I need somebody to go in there and tell them, hey guys, that is not what you can't say that. That's not right. So we hired another full-time. So right now we have meteorologists during the week. It's Samantha, Max, and Melissa. And then on the weekends, we have freelancers who are so strong, Dan Peck and Dan Manzo. And then we have this new Brittany. And we keep trying to build that team because, we travel together. We're all really good friends. We, have parties together. It is such a strong meteorological unit. And I'm very grateful. And now we've got Rob on board, and people who care so much about weather makes weather even feel bigger and better than it ever has been.
So yeah, I was wondering if you could just take us through kind of your typical day when you wake up and when you're finished.
So I get up around 4 at the latest. I try to get up earlier than that, but I don't know, sleeping until 4. And then I get to the studio by about 4:45. I meet with Sam and Max, the other meteorologists I'm with, and we kind of go over some of the big pictures and how can we tell the story best from a national level, and allowing the local meteorologists to do their job. So we try to balance that out. Usually models I've looked at the night before. And I focus on headline area. It's so funny because people they'll ask me, hey, what about this in New York City? I'm like, I haven't even looked because I focus so much more on wherever the concerning or dangerous weather is. That's where my head and mind goes. So this time of year, it's mid-south, south, Midwest, and plains. And so that's where my whole eyes rarely go to the East Coast this time of year. So anyway, from that point forward, we discuss. We have a meeting with another, senior producer on the staff and tell him what we think would be great. We kind of collaborate. I'll call it collaborate, not debate, what would be best. And then we, go on TV 7 to 9. And this position on GMA has changed significantly, even in the 5 years I've been here. The job of a network meteorologist, I don't think is even the same as it was. And I think that there are to come. Basically what I'm saying is some days I have 15 seconds to give you one picture that hopefully impacts you. And then your local meteorologist can take over and have that time, which I miss greatly, by the way. I wish I could have 3.5 minutes of weather. But on the social media end and on, the extra projects I'm doing, a show called Food Forecast, that and Miles from Tomorrowland on Disney Junior, where I'm getting and communicating the science and the atmospheric love that I have, the passion, that's where I see my strength and responsibility growing. So I think GMA is an outstanding platform. I think in the first half hour, we hit the major headlines. We get everybody advanced. This morning, we had a brand new tornado watch that was out. If people were watching in Virginia Beach, and of our 5 million viewers this morning, and, so many are in Raleigh this morning saying, oh, heads up that the next couple of hours, we have severe storms coming. That's still my job. And I still take that as prime responsibility. But this has grown into so much more, and that I didn't even anticipate. And it's very cool.
Yeah, that's great. Very,
Sorry,
so
and
very.
then I didn't finish my day. I'm so sorry. Look at, I
Oh.
got stuck on GMA. Anyway, then I come
it's
back
good.
I come back in the afternoon and do world news, and then in the evening. So 2 to 3 days a week, and then Rob does the others, so that I cannot have a 16-hour day every time.
Gotcha. Sorry about that.
No, I didn't know. I didn't realize. I was just talking. See, this is
So-
what happens when you keep me to 15 seconds. I want to talk. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you get the chance now to take as much time as you want. So very few broadcast meteorologists have an audience that spans the entire country. So you've been on both sides of it. You've been in local markets and you've been in a national market. What are some of the biggest differences and maybe some of the challenges to forecasting in a national scale?
Forecasting nationally, because I have such a specialty, I would say, and experience in the Midwest Great Lakes, severe weather, snow, I feel most comfortable in that region. I think my challenge is when I get over to the Cascades or the Sierra, I haven't lived there. I've been there, I've visited, but I don't have the experience that someone who has worked there for 3 decades, even 5 years has. They know the rivers, they know the valleys, they know how those micro scale climates work. When I'm giving this broad brush of these areas, I have to really consider that and remember that I am broad brushing. Now, there are regions that I'm much better at, but we always talk about this in our team because a lot of them are East Coast based. Luckily Rob worked in Portland and lived in California, so we've got West Coast experience now. But Melissa is from Florida. She's tropical. We have all of our strengths that we kind of bring to the table. And that's why working with a team, not one of us can be the most experienced, the best in every single region in the United States, and certainly not the globe. Something every single day. And I learn from our viewers. They send me pictures, they send me video, and I'll look up on a map. And that's what I love. I still have that nerd in me that loves to look at the topography of a specific region and think, now, why did that happen there? How did that happen? So it's a lot of even post-casting kind of learning from it about these different areas. And over time, and gained experience in the 5 years of, well, it's probably more like 7 with MSNBC of doing that network type forecast.
Gotcha. So speaking of your fans, you're in a really, really bright spotlight. So I imagine you get a ton of fan interaction, and for the most part, hopefully that is, a good positive side of your job.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get the negative feedback or maybe see some haters on Twitter or on Facebook, how do you handle their criticism?
Embrace it. I really do. It took me a long time to get to this place, but because the spotlight, as you said, is broader, it's larger, you're going to get people from all over. And so you're going to get a lot of negative. I get so much positive and happy and, right behind you. We're with you, lady. And it's hard not to take those seriously as well. But what I try to do is not take any of them seriously. I try to not let the, blowing up my skirt get me too excited and confident, because that has to come out of yourself. And so at the same time, I don't take the negative too personally either. I also never want to get to the place where I'm not listening to someone, making constructive criticism. I still go back and watch everything I do. I still want to grow. I do not think I'm the best of the best of the best. So I think as long as you stay in that mind space, those negative or positive comments can only mean so much. I find it highly entertaining, though, if I'm traveling or whatever happens, and especially after I had a baby, I noticed a big uptick in negativity, especially when I travel. A lot of people don't think that a woman. I don't understand why it's different, but why a woman shouldn't be working as much or traveling as much. And I really like to let them know, just so you know, you've reached a real human being at the other end of this keyboard. You don't know me. You don't know how much time I've spent with my child. But I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday, and that's, so there's I've really gotten good and almost inviting it because I find it fun. They're people too, and they need attention, obviously. So I'm happy to give it to them.
That's very refreshing, honestly. And
if it gets to the point, if it ever gets to the point where they're perverted or gross, like that, I don't respond to those.
Yeah.
But I'm more talking about the ones that I'm trying to think of. Even one of my recents was really good. It was Ginger Zee is like drizzle, annoying and no personality. And I'm like, and I wrote back and I'm like, I really appreciate the weather reference. agreed that drizzle is annoying, but I do think drizzle has personality. Gotta disagree with you there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you briefly touched on it, but I was curious if you could talk about a weather event that you covered that really sticks out, that maybe had a big impact on you or a huge impact on others.
Katrina's it, because I had really only covered small tornadoes and things in Michigan prior to that. But I was 24, I think, 24 or 25. And I was basically had not reported much. And so they said, we're going to send you to this storm. I was really excited about the potential for the storm because again, scientifically, I always thought that way. I never had the opportunity before that. And out of all storms, my first storm to cover is Hurricane Katrina. Wow. And I get to Gulfport, Mississippi after the storm had hit, because we stopped in Nashville so that we could not be a part of the, action, go in after. And we had another team in New Orleans, so I didn't need to be there, and Gulfport had been hit so hard. And so I went, and I remember out for about 3 minutes and then looking around and realizing, oh, of leaving this area that was still, they weren't going to be, and they still aren't the same. And so now we've had more than a decade pass, and that storm is still impacting people. And so that's what I had to get my mind and body and everything. Nothing has been as impactful as that. And I hope it won't be, but it did teach me a lot of lessons, and it made me see humanity first. And that's what I think. It's very easy as, a meteorologist to not see that. And I think that event gave me a very unique and quick perspective on storms.
Wow, yeah, that's a powerful story. So you mentioned when you went to Valparaiso, you never really saw yourself on TV. That wasn't really the goal from the get-go. I'm assuming you never saw yourself on Dancing with the Stars. I'm curious what that experience was like, because I think you're the only meteorologist to be on that show.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so what was that like? I don't know. It seemed like an awesome experience.
In news the whole time, and news, no matter what level you're at, news is news. When you cover a tornado, you're covering a tornado. You still, you don't have anywhere to go to the bathroom. You don't have, it's not as glamorous no matter what level. You cross over into entertainment, and I'm going to tell you right now, that is glamour. It was so cool. It was beyond any wild dream that I could make up in my head. The joy that surrounds every person that works there on a hit network show that has been on for 4 seasons. It was such a glorious feeling. I feel so bad. I always, even on GMA the other day, I said, oh God, I miss it every day. And I realized how bad that sounded. It was such a great experience, and something I didn't expect happened. And that's, I think I became an even better meteorologist, oddly, because of it. Watching and having an even greater audience than I ever did, because now we're talking about 12, 15 million people that watch every Monday night. I realized how little time and how few words you need to say to make an impact. So there was just 2 times to mention, I really love science and I love the atmosphere and I want to inspire young ladies. The response I got and the amount of young girls that wrote me after their moms wrote me, and we started corresponding, and we started, and to know how little it takes, that sounds bad, but how little it takes to inspire somebody. That was a great reminder that it doesn't need to be big. It can be small. It can be just a mention. It can be one vote of confidence, or, you know, one little girl looking at you and saying, I could do that too. And I think the part that I was most proud of, and something that, you know, with the negative viewer thing, a lot of people have a very hard time realizing that a woman can wear a dress and makeup and also be intelligent. And I think that that combination is crazy that we're not to that point in society yet. Recently I saw this great study that 2 people switched their email signatures in business, one woman, one a man. And for the next 2 weeks, they saw this marked difference in how they were treated. And so that it's out there. It's still out there. So if I can at least, you know, shift people's, vision, maybe it's 15 million people that have watched and now they know that the word meteorologist can be attached to a woman. Outstanding. And so that's what I kind of learned from dancing on top of the tango, which was awesome.
That is awesome. So in a similar vein, we ask this question to everyone who comes on the show. Is a bit of advice that you would give to an up-and-coming broadcast meteorologist, maybe someone who's in a local market, wants to be in your shoes someday? What kind of advice would you give them?
Oh, don't ever take my job. No, just kidding. No, my advice is just, I think, too short-sighted. I was always looking at what was right in front of me and what I had just done. I beat myself up so many times for bad shows. Each bad show you have is going to make your better show next. And it's only going to get better. And then I think just not worrying about what's happening at this moment. I always say this, but what's happening and what you're worried about today very likely will not affect you tomorrow. Definitely not in a week, certainly not in a month, and I'd be very few things in a year. And so being able to gain perspective in life has been something I wish I could have done a little bit earlier, because I would have a lot of trouble. I don't think that I wouldn't have gotten here or whatever it is. I want people to give themselves a break. We all can't be perfect. And if you don't get the one job that you think that you needed to get to that next level, something else is coming. And if you love this in your heart, you really want to do this, it's going to happen. You keep setting those goals, put them out there. I know that's very vision boardy and I don't get into that, but it's more like setting your goal for yourself, telling yourself daily, don't say when or if, say when. I think there's something to that. I think there's something to believing deep within yourself that whatever it is going to happen. And at the same time, if you don't like it now, just a warning, it's not going to be different. Granted, I have a makeup artist now, but other than that, I'm telling you, the fights are still the same. The meteorological, debates are still the same. The social media is only amplified. So yeah, do a little reality check too.
Well, Ginger, I think it's safe to say you're a role model to many of us in the weather community. So thanks for coming on and talking with us today.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you guys. And this is what I love to do. This is what, I used to teach at Valparaiso when I was working in Chicago, and I still keep in touch with most of my students. And I'm so proud. And I joke that they shouldn't take my job, but I'd be proud if they did. And, I'm going to get old here at some point and not want to do it. I have a lot of other ideas, but I think as long as we keep strengthening the need and importance of weather, and we're good people that care about our science, it's going to stick with us. So I'm proud of helping. Anything I can do to help you guys out, I'm happy to do. Yeah, thank you.
And that was Ginger Zee from ABC News. Very lucky to have her on the show. We're thankful that she was willing to take time out of a very busy day to chat with us, and a fascinating interview to hear about how she got to ABC and what her day is like on a daily basis. Dakota, what did you take out of the interview?
I took a lot of stuff. Sorry, my mic was muted there. But one thing, I mean, can you believe that she started with James Spann? Out of all places to look at her resume and be like, yeah, let's give this student a shot. It was it was ABC, I forget, 33 or something in Birmingham with James Spann. That's unbelievable. And I could go on and on, honestly, about some of the things that she said and her coverage of Katrina and how that as a meteorologist, she started seeing her job as more of a humanity thing. She saw humanity first, and it wasn't just about the weather. It was how the weather was impacting people. And I think that's a lesson that, you know, all meteorologists can take from. And it was an awesome time talking with her. I actually wrote up, I think, about 1,500 words, just summarizing the interview, pulling some of the cooler points and more fascinating points from that. So check that out on our website, theweatherjunkies.com. And the audio will be up there too. Yeah, I mean, Tyler, I don't know. I could talk about it forever. Really cool interview.
I wish I could have been a part.
What did you pull from it? You're an on-air meteorologist. What did you pull from that?
Well,
wait. Sorry. Before you say that, can you believe how quickly she became the chief meteorologist at Good Morning America? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, in her time there, and even over the span of her career, you know, she joined ABC in 2011, so that was roughly a decade from when she graduated, which is pretty quick.
Yeah.
Just listening to the interview, the one thing that I got out of it was, wow, for a national meteorologist, pretty down to earth.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how she handles criticism on Twitter and Facebook. Cracks me up. She doesn't take it too seriously, and I feel like you kind of have to do that if you want to stay sane.
Yeah, well, I imagine she gets, you know, at least hundreds of messages
a day.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess she has to try not to spend too much time comments and everything, but yeah, I guess that's gonna do it for this week. If you don't already follow us on Twitter, we're at the WX Junkies on Twitter. We're also on Facebook. Give us a like there. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, pretty much any podcast platform. Give us a rating or review. I promise I'm gonna give shout outs to everyone who has given us a rating or review thus far. I think we have a few lined up. So maybe we'll do that in the next week or so. And then you can find all the content on theweatherjunkies.com. You can listen there, see some of the tweets that we talked about, and any extras from the interviews. Tyler, we have a jam-packed May. We're almost fully booked for May already. Give us a preview of that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I guess the scheduling assistant hire has helped. No, I'm just kidding. It's still just the two of us. But we
unpaid intern.
We do have the whole month of May booked. Of course, May is 1 week less than this month in terms of Thursdays. So we have 4 episodes. We begin a week from now with an episode featuring Michael Spagnolo. He is currently working with the Florida Emergency Management Team. So we'll have a discussion about emergency management and weather and what his experience has been like so far. He's been there since earlier this year, I believe. So that's another fascinating spoke of meteorology that we'll delve into. On May 11th, we have Carrie and Caitlin from Bugs and Stuff. Dakota had that podcast cooked up, so I'm sure he's very excited about that one. On May 18th, the third Thursday of the month, Garrett Argianis joins the show. We'll have a discussion with him about forensic meteorology and some other side topics, perhaps, but he does a lot of forensic meteorology, and if you're not familiar with that, that involves going to court, investigating what has gone on with certain weather events and incidents, another prong of our field. So that's a pretty interesting episode. And then on the 25th, we have Greta Shum from Climate Central. So quite a month spanning all different aspects of meteorology and climate. Very excited, and we'll get going here in 7 days. We start the month of May, but we certainly hope that you enjoyed this episode. And on behalf of Ginger, Dakota, and myself, thank you for watching. And we hope you'll join us right back here next week.
Cal, I gotta go, Julia. We got cows.